going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now.
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, it is great to be back in front of the camera. It has been a while. I've had some problems with my PC. Basically had to get it wiped. All my files went missing, MIA, never to be retrieved again, which was a little bit sad. But we are here back with another how to counter guide, and this deck is a little bit one out of left field. Basically Mikanko. Now if you haven't been following the metagame, you probably won't know that Mikanko's been making a few waves in some kind of like higher tier tournaments, most specifically a couple of YCSs that have passed us, and they've done very well. And if you are not ready for this deck, it can either OTK you or set up a board where you literally cannot play. So here is a little counter guide on how to kind of like prepare for Mikanko, because this could be a sleeper pick and you could actually run into this in a few tournaments, whether that be at a regional, YCS, or even just something as small as your local. So let's just get straight into it. Okay then, so what is the Mikanko strategy trying to achieve? Well, this is twofold, ladies and gents, and this is an interesting strategy because this deck can actually go first, but it can go second very well. And on its initial inception, it was a going second deck, but after a few testing, a few play tests, players started to figure out that this deck could do a whole lot more, especially with the introduction of ISOD into the strategy. So going first, it typically wants to just lock you out of the game via Acid Golem. I think that's probably the most effective way of playing the deck going first, because it doesn't put up an intimidating board, so it needs some kind of unfair element in it to enable it to do so. So typically it's going to give you an Acid Golem via Geonator Transversa, swapping a couple of cards. It does use Ken and Jen, the two warriors that came out most recently. I think they came out in AGOV. And what it looks to do is just kind of lock you out the game, because once you've got Acid Golem on your field, you cannot special summon. So typically going first, it's going to have a couple of negates, maybe a couple of hand traps, Acid Golem on your side of the field, as well as a couple of monsters on field. Acid Golem cannot attack, so you can't just be over it and make your own Zeus, by the way. So it's really difficult to out. So what do you do? So the deck is a little bit fragile going first, I'm not going to lie. If you've got specific hand traps in your hand like Drone and Lockbird, Nibiru, Infinite Impermanence even for the Geonator Transversa, it does really go a long way in stopping this deck. It does kind of fold to a couple of hand traps. More conversely, if you don't have any hand traps but you've got a couple of board breakers, ideally something that tributes for cost. So if you're looking at like Forbidden Droplets, for example, or even the more popularized enemy controller, that is something that can really help, because it will allow you to get the Acid Golem off your side of the field and be able to kind of like impact their board. They do end with a couple of monsters that can prevent targeting, like I think it's the Jewel, the green one, or the green and yellow one, stops targeting effects for their Mikanko card. So that can be a little bit difficult to play around, but typically you're going to end up with an Acid Golem on your side of the field, which prevents you from special summoning. So you need some kind of way of getting it off board, negating its effect, to be able to play the game basically. So yeah, droplets, anything that tributes for cost, whether that be like a monster effect or any kind of like spell or trap effect, would definitely go a long way in enabling you to play on your first turn. Also, if you're thinking in terms of low impact hand traps, I'm talking about your Ash Blossoms, your Ghost Bells, anything of that nature. Some of the cards that you want to really be looking out to hit, you definitely want to hit the Hari, which is going to net it a search for and equip. You want to go ahead and Ash Blossom the Water Arabesque, just because that card is just absolutely crazy, going first or second. You also want to Ghost Bow the Fire Dance, because that's going to typically kind of like recurse some of their resources and be able them to kind of like facilitate more plays basically, because there are a few cards that let them Foolish Burial to the graveyard and then retrieve them from graveyard and then continue playing. If they are playing Armory Core for whatever reason, go ahead and Ash that. It's a nice little Ash target. In terms of like monsters on field, you want to definitely hit the ISOD. That can be Impermed or Veiled or Ghost Mourned, as well as the Geonator Transversa. Definitely go ahead and Imperm, Veiler, Ghost Mourned that card, mainly because if those two cards resolve, they're off to the races basically, unless you've got something like Nibiru, which I definitely would hold the Nibiru until you see the 2 level 3s on board, or until there's some of the Acid Golem. You can go ahead and Nibiru then, because typically they've summoned a few times by then, so they're probably way far into their combo. And that's just like my advice for the low impact hand traps. In terms of board breakers though, ladies and gents, your number one best friend is going to be Book of Eclipse. This card absolutely cooks Makanko, does not destroy, does not target, flips all monsters on the field face down, which basically turns off all the equipped spells because they can't be equipped to face down monsters, as well as shutting off the Acid Golem. Ladies and gents, this is your be all and end all to Makanko right here in one card, which is a little bit crazy in my opinion, just because it kind of cooks the deck. Like, the deck just can't like really survive. Obviously there's other counters that the deck could potentially play, like Ash. If they've got Ash in their hand, Ash in the Book of Eclipse is a feels bad, just because it just means that you literally aren't really going to be able to do much. But if they do not have the Ash Blossom, oh my days, shuts off everything, has a couple of bodies on board. Again, if you've got anything that tributes for cost, you've got free fodder basically, just because you've got an Acid Golem on your side of the field, which is face down. So definitely a very, very strong card, something that you may want to equip in your arsenal. And because Pearl is still in the format, ladies and gents, you could potentially still have this in your side, so it's definitely a good card to include. Book of Moon, probably not as strong, just because if they've got Jewel on the field, you can't actually target some of their monsters, which can make it a little bit more difficult. However, Book of Eclipse definitely gets the thumbs up from me, ladies and gents. Okay, so going second, this is where the problems start, mainly because there's two things that this deck does that works in tandem. One, it does not need its normal summon. Two, it can OTK out of nowhere. So when you hear those two words in, well, those two lines basically in quick succession, you already know what kind of cards pop up to mind. Kaijus, Lava Golems. This is going to be very, very difficult for you, ladies and gents, if they're able to Kaiju or Lava Golem some of your monsters, because there's literally no way that you can play around that, and they do definitely main Kaijus and Lava Golems. So it's difficult to reflect the damage. Well, it's difficult to stop the OTK from happening, because it can just continuously crash into the Lava Golem. And I think Lava Golem is probably going to be one of the things that that is probably going to be most prominent, mainly because it also does burn damage. So if you got Lava Golem sitting on your side of the field, one, you're going to get just reflected 1 billion damage, and then two, they could attack you twice and then just let you pass to your turn, and then Lava Golem is going to burn you in your standby phase for the remaining damage, which is definitely a feels bad. So what can you do? Going first, setting up this deck needs a few things to be able to start playing. If they don't see the Kaiju and the Lava Golem, they're very susceptible to any kind of like hard negation or any kind of like negates basically, so they can't actually facilitate their plays. D-Barrier is also a good thing to do, just because their ritual monsters actually facilitate a lot of their searches, and then being able to just kind of like D-Barrier and just say no to the ritual monsters is definitely a nice feeling. The deck does play Access Code Talker. It also does play Underworld Goddess in certain situations, because they can flood the field somewhat with a few monsters. So especially with Ken and Jen as well, they will actually be able to kind of like do a few things with that. So do bear that in mind, ladies and gents, that they could just swallow up your monsters one way or another, and it's very, very difficult to counteract that. Secondly, anti-spell. Anti-spell just literally just says no to this deck. They need their equipped spells. They need to be able to use their equipped spells immediately to get instant advantage. So if you just set an anti-spell and flip it in their standby phase, their plays are super limited. Unless they can out the anti-spell, they're struggling, ladies and gents, and it's almost a pass turn. And their monsters without the equipped spells, they kind of just sit there basically. Yeah, they don't die by battle or whatever, but you can still just remove them from the field. It's easy enough to do so. So definitely two cards that will shut down this strategy, along with all the other specific floodgates that you would typically expect to see. TC Boo, I don't know, Rivalry of the Warlords in certain situations. Goals and Match is definitely a big one, because they play quite a few attributes. I think it's like fire, wind and water, so that just shuts down their strategy for a start. So definitely look into the Floodgate era if you're going first, just to enable you to survive, because 9 times out of 10 your monster is going to get tributed for a Kaiju or a Lava Golem. And that is it, ladies and gents. Short, sweet, to the point. Now, I may have missed off a few cards, and that's where you guys come in. Like I say, I am only one person. This is just my own thoughts and opinions. If there's anything that I should have included in this like counter list, definitely get at me in that comment section below, ladies and gents. My ears are open. I'm always in the space of looking for like new texts, new ideas, new strategies, new ways to play. So definitely get at me. I'm very responsive to the comments as well. I tend to try and reply to as many comments as I can. But yeah, we find ourselves at the end of another video. As always, if you did enjoy this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.